Simon Quinn, and I'm the Executive Director of the High Streets Task Force. And sorry, Tom. There we go. And today I wanted to welcome you to our third webinar in the series, looking at the Routemap transformation. If you hadn't been with us before, don't worry, we're not going to need knowledge from the previous two webinars, but you can find out about them from our website. This is our Routemap transformation. It looks a little bit confusing if you've just joined us, but today we're going to concentrate only on a particular part of it. This is what we looked at last week. We looked at leadership and we looked at the need for partnerships. This week we're moving on from the idea of restructuring to repositioning, and we're going to look at collaborative visions. And we think what's very important is that in drawing up these visions, we need to think of data and evidence as to how they're going to make the vision effective and inclusive. One of the things that you're going to see today is some outstanding examples of visions. And you're going to hear why we think it's important that we have visions. But these examples are the exception rather than the rule. You would think that there would be many examples around the country, and there are some. But we did some research a few years ago looking at visions that existed for towns and cities. And they're very hard to find, even though they should be shared and they should be available. They're not on local authority websites in many cases. And if you do find some, what there actually is just a collection of words, sometimes quite vague, that could be about any place. Sometimes if you find articles in local papers talking about visions, it turns out to just be one development in a town. So we need to think about why visions are important and need to be much more than that. So we have today some great examples. We're going to have a look at why visioning is important, and that we will hear from Bill first of all. But there's another reason now why visioning is important, and that is government is requiring it when it's allocating funding. And these extracts from the guidance stress the need for town centre visions that in fact are strategic and broadly owned. So today we're going to look in detail at this. And it's my pleasure first to welcome Bill Grimsey, who will be possibly a person who needs no introduction, but has written quite a lot about town centres and the challenges they face. So that challenge we think is important for visioning. And then we'll hear from Hayley Owen from Shropshire Council about what is happening in Shrewsbury with their big town plan, which really does illustrate many of the principles that we think are important. And then Alan Anthony from Threesixty Architecture in Scotland is actually been working on Paisley and has produced a guide for Scotland, which looks at visioning. So we have a lot of ground to cover today, but I'm going to start by handing over to Bill.
Well, thank you, Simon, and thank you for the opportunity to present at this webinar. Can I have the first slide, please? The title of my 10-minute talk is the same title as our latest paper of the Grimsey Review trilogy that's now out there. This is called Build Back Better. It's a COVID supplement that we produced in about 5 weeks, when normally these papers take 6 months. So I'm very grateful to the team that worked on this and brought it to everyone's attention. So the Build Back Better phrase is a very important phrase because it speaks to vision. What it says is that you cannot recreate the past. You must not look back to the past and harp on the past as being the place we need to get to. We need to go forward. We need to think about the 21st century and the changes that are hitting people. So if I could go to the next slide, please, now. When we went into lockdown because of COVID-19, we were already in a place where our high streets were facing a crisis. We did our first review in 2013, and the heart of that recommendation then was that you must look upon your towns as community hubs and don't rely on retail anymore to be the main draw for people coming into the town. We need to look at community, we need to look at the impact of technology on community, and in order to get the town's survival right, we have to ask the questions about the very purpose of those towns. Historically, they've been marketplaces and trading places. In the future, they're going to be gathering places for experiential activities and for communities to gather and do stuff together. It's going to be based around health, education, entertainment, leisure, arts, crafts, and yes, you'll get some shops, but do not think that the model of the last century, where we cloned every town in the country to look the same, is going to suffice in this century. So in order to do this change, we need to think about three main things. I'm just going to highlight those. The first is, we call it localism on steroids. We are advocating local people, local communities, local authorities, stakeholders take control of their own towns and reinvent them. The second thing we're calling for is a different kind of leadership in those towns, one that is not your historic leaders, and I'm talking predominantly about councils now. I'm looking to advocate that we should have commercial leaders for your town PLC, people who understand vision, understand business plans, and can take things forward and take people with them. And the third thing is to look for towns without cars. That's coming down the track. By 2050, there won't be cars in our towns. So, you know, you need to stop thinking about car park charges. They're just the vagrancies of today. So let's move on to the next slide and look at what empowering communities can do to come up with solutions that are unique to their needs. Now, in the latest COVID paper that we've just published, which you can get, by the way, I think probably through the IPM, but you can certainly get it from vanishinghighstreet.com. You will see lots of examples of where local governments have made changes. So you need to empower those communities to come up with those solutions. And they need to be ambitious in order to make the changes necessary for the 21st century. And if you look at this slide, you will see a picture of a shopping centre. That's the upper picture. It's one of two shopping centres in Stockton-on-Tees. The local authority were brave and courageous and had a long-term vision and plan for that town to open up the river to the high street and the town centre. So what do? They bought both shopping centres, and they have taken, or they're taking, the retailers out of one shopping centre and putting it into the other, so that it's now full and it will be commercially viable, and they'll sell that back to the private sector to run. I don't think local authorities should be running shopping centres, and they certainly should not be buying them to subsidise income to plug budgets. That's no real future in that. And there's a reason why the shopping centres are for sale, by the way, so just be careful. But this guy, the leader of this council, bought both to knock them down. And guess what the vision was? It's the picture underneath. To open up that river right the way into the town centre. And you'll notice that it means moving a dual carriageway. Now, this is ambitious plans with green space that is going to make this place an attractive place to visit, live, work and play for the local community and for visitors. So if we move to the next slide, what we can conclude from all this is that the old model is definitely broken. It doesn't work and isn't going to be sufficient for the future. So a new model needs to be an inspirational model, and it needs to focus on heritage. That's the most important thing. We're very fortunate in the UK. All of our towns up and down the country have a history and they have a heritage, which can be part of their branding and can be part of the proposition that they bring to the people that live, work, play and visit those towns. And they need to prioritise community instead of distant shareholders. So what we're talking about here is a stakeholder capitalism. That's the most important thing that we see as the 21st century ambition. Not shareholder capitalism, but stakeholder capitalism. How do we bring all the stakeholders into the local town and make that enterprise work for the benefit of all the stakeholders, some of which will be shareholders. What we don't want is distant investors holding on to a property that's been shut for 4 years, like the BHS were, and that investment manager has 3 at the bottom that are closed, but his bottom right-hand number still works and he still satisfies his returns for his bosses. He does not care about those 3 at the bottom, and we don't want them anymore. And COVID-19 and this pandemic has woken everybody up, and we now have woken up and we're smelling the fresh air rather than smelling the coffee. And we've got to capture that spirit and make the changes from that old model to this wonderful new model, and capture the opportunity to remodel. Can I have the next slide, please? Remodel around community, more housing in towns, more green space, more inviting things to do stuff. This picture here is the picture of a square in a town called Routemap in Belgium. Now, the mayor of Routemap was captured by our first review in 2013, and he invited me over to do a presentation, which he had 500 residents attend, to talk about breaking all of the old ways of doing things. And this was a car park right in the middle of town. It is now a green space, and it's now in front of a church that has been repurposed, this old, wonderful old building, into a food market, rather like the Borough Market is in London, with fresh food, cooked food, and they gather there and eat in the summer. And this has given communities the opportunity to circulate and do stuff. We must lift communities and not drain them. So 30% empty commercial space, full of betting shops and kebab shops and all the stuff that we all know about, isn't lifting a local community. And we must take stuff to the local community and change it. It isn't going to change on its own. It's not going to be market-led. It has to be vision-led. So if we go to the next slide, please. We need to give everyone a stake in their town centre, and we need to get this collaborative movement together. And I do think it still will be led by local authorities and new types of leaders, but it really doesn't matter where the leadership comes from, as long as it's there, to come and put a sustainable future in place that is fit for the 21st century, that understands technology and recognises that retail is going to change. During COVID, our online shopping has shot to 40% of retail sales, and a lot of that is going to stick. But however, during COVID, a lot of us have shopped locally. I live in a town centre. I have 50 yards from me a delicatessen, Italian, run by a guy called Tony, would be, wouldn't it? And he has queues all the way down the street throughout this COVID pandemic. And he's done the social distancing, he's worked responsibly. And I've walked up and down that queue and I said, do you know what, people, I hope you really recognise what Tony's done here and support him after COVID. And people are nodding, and they're seeing wildlife, and they're smelling the fresh air. So we have an opportunity to create communities and towns which have wonderful experiences up and down the country through a regeneration that can be as imaginative as Stockton-on-Tees, which is blowing up a shopping centre and replacing it with a park to the river, through to small events such as the one that you see on this slide now. So it's based on a quality of life and experience, and encourages joint management of risk. We don't want landlords, absent landlords anymore. We've got to get rid of it. We've got to ask government to help us with that, and they have to have a stake in the future of the local town. So, to wrap up, if I can have the final slide, please. High streets and town centres are reaching out for a sense of purpose. And that sense of purpose historically has been a marketplace and a trading place. The future is different, and it will be different. and it's based on the community, and it needs people to grab this opportunity from youth and children right through to white hairs like me, to actually appeal to what is the quality of life. Now, just want to leave you with a final thought. I happen to be in that age group which is high risk during COVID. It's an old picture, by the way, it's a young one. And, you know, I worked my entire career cloning every town in the country with brands. I worked my entire career bringing products to the UK through sophisticated supply chains. I de-seasonalised fresh food. I carbonised the planet along with all my other contemporaries. It's a very sobering thought to recognise that what you built needs to be unpicked, because the future is about my grandchildren and their children. And that is going to rely on a different form of society. And we have that opportunity to grab that sense of change that's come about through COVID right now. And that's going to take leadership, and that's going to take the opportunity to do stuff. And government can help, they can change things, but at the end of the day, it's about communities, and it's about communities gathering and local leadership. So I implore you all on this call to think just how radical you could change your place and make it a place for the future, one that recognises climate change, recognises the car-borne culture of the last century is disappearing and being replaced by a mobile culture and technology culture, and actually builds a place where the quality of life is great fun and people do want to come, live, work and play and visit your brand because it's the best in the UK. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bill. That was excellent. There are questions coming in, but we'll deal with them after we've heard the other speakers. So it's a delight to go on to hear what's happening in Shrewsbury that might be part of the response that Bill is advocating. Hayley, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited to be joining you today to share on behalf of the Big Town Plan Partnership the collective approach we've taken to develop a holistic plan and vision for Shrewsbury. I'm going to talk you through the journey we've been on, how the Big Town Plan Partnership came about, the co-creating of the vision for the town, and how the plan is developing and we're moving forward as a partnership. Also how we are responding to the COVID crisis and the steps we've taken and the Routemap going forward. So what drove the Big Town Plan Partnership? So Shrewsbury is a beautiful town, so I thought I'd show you an image of that if you're not familiar with it, with loads of wonderful historic assets. It's the county town for Shropshire, birthplace of Darwin, hugely independent retail offer, and some fantastic natural assets with the river looping around the town. So you ask yourself, well, what's the why the Big Town Plan? Shrewsbury has challenges like every town centre has. We've got a relatively low wage, low skill economy, lack of jobs for younger people, a significantly ageing population, a lack of affordable housing for young people and families, a lack of that kind of flexible commercial and affordable workspace within the town centre, areas of underutilised space within the town centre, and some constraints when it comes to movement and access through and around the town. Also to touch on, you know, we have three large shopping centres within the town. The council, as Bill alluded to, we purchased our shopping centres in 2018 with the sole purpose of regeneration. One of the shopping centres is quite empty now, and it's all part of our Big Town Plan ambition to reshape and redesign the town centre in an effective and collaborative way. So just some images of the kind of other areas we're talking about, some of our wonderful historic buildings in swathes of car parks, a lovely multi-storey there I'd show you with some 1980 shopping centre behind it and buses. So that real, you know, creating a collective vision. So the three partners from Shropshire Council, Business District and the Town Council came together to address these challenges around that shared ambition, really simply, to make Shrewsbury great. Some plans have come and gone before, like all areas, and why haven't they succeeded and why didn't they work? And we concluded it's about that co-creation of a vision that we can all buy into, we all own, we all care about, and we're all passionate about. So in 2016, we held a visioning workshop with the key stakeholders to gather their ideas and thoughts collectively, and take these forward into developing some key, simple visions and themes for Shrewsbury, rethinking movement and place, creating a place for enterprise, nurturing natural Shrewsbury, and supporting vitality, life and mix. As a partnership, we play to each other's strengths, and we use each other's skills, knowledge and assets to work together to drive forward the ambition and the plans. We have good debates, good discussions. You know, we don't agree on everything, but that's the power of the partnership, and that's the strength of the leadership that we have collectively. So in 2018, we opened a pop-up shop on the Wild Cop. It was a new approach. We opened the doors, a real blank canvas, to invite people in to hear what people, the public, the people of Shrewsbury, the businesses, had to say and what they wanted in their town. We had over 2,500 visitors through the door in the 3 weeks we were open. We had over 5,000 post-it notes, emails and messages on our website, social media campaigns through the Big Town Plan. And it was a really exciting and an innovative way that we felt we engaged, and we had the conversation and we heard, and most importantly, we listened. In March 2018, working with LDA Design, we held an intensive master planning week with our stakeholders. It really was quite an intense week where we sketched, we drew, we designed, we fed back, and we started to put the bones together of the plan in that kind of real co-creative and collective way. We then held a further, so this is some of the feedback that we had. We had a further consultation event in September where we played back all of the information we heard, all of the information, the plans, the designs, back out to the public, and had hugely positive response to what was produced, and it, you know, a really truly co-created plan. So moving from vision to delivery. So this is the Shrewsbury Big Town Plan. We've got our own website where you can have a look at that with a video as well, which is quite interesting for you to see. The plan has been agreed by all three partners through our formal processes, Shropshire Council, the Town Council and the BID, which is, you know, really important that, you know, it's embedded within our DNA in that sense. But also, more importantly, all of these kind of key stakeholders within the town signed up, and it sounds a bit cheesy, but they physically signed up to the Big Town Plan. We've got their signatures on a big piece of design in the Big Town Plan unit, which we have in the shopping centre where we hold lots of our events and meetings. And it just reminds everybody, you know, of that really important work that we've done, and we're all custodians of this plan. We're all helping to deliver it in everything we do. All of the property owners and all of the partners and consortiums around the table, everything we do should be bringing us back to this vision and plan. And that's really important for us, the community and the role they play, and how they feel about this plan, and that it's a living plan that we can all touch and feel and believe in. So these are just kind of the headlines that we remind ourselves of. You know, as I said, we're all custodians of this plan. You know, these are things we ensure we're going to do, ensuring the vision isn't diluted, you know, bringing projects forward, ensuring you know, we're communicating well with people, we're engaging with our stakeholders, and we're ultimately delivering and driving forward the ambitions. So I won't go on too much about governance, but it's important, just the fact that we have created a Big Town Plan partnership. We have the governance in place to ensure that we can make those decisions and seize those opportunities, and we can ensure we're driving through on all of those key themes that we've set out for the Big Town Plan. So where are we now, 2020? The Big Town Plan partnership agreement's in place between the three kind of key partners there. We've all co-funded this until 2022, which is really important. You know, we pulled some resource to really sit behind the Big Town Plan and ensure we deliver against what we said. We've appointed an independent chair, and this has been really important for us actually to help drive us forward. and put some challenge and rigour around us. You know, are we doing what we say we do? We said we'd do. Are we sticking to our vision and goals? And that's been a really, really interesting step forward for us. The plan, as I said, is embedded in our local plan. That's important. It's a hook and it's coming through the emerging local plan. And quite excitingly, we've just commissioned a piece of place marketing work. And that's really about the audience and positioning Shrewsbury for the best for the future. Are we putting ourselves across in the right market? How are we reaching those areas and that experience that we want to get over about Shrewsbury? And ultimately it comes back to, you know, making Shrewsbury the best place and celebrating Shrewsbury. So with some clear action, so that's quite an exciting next step for us. Quickly wanted to talk to you about the Shrewsbury test. That's something that came out from the 2018 plan, and that's really something that was a lot of the feedback actually from the workshop sessions we had and from the pop-up shop, was comments around quality of design and you know, are these things talking to each other? Are they the best for Shrewsbury? And it's saying, you know, actually, does it strengthen the town? Does it support the vision? And most importantly, does it make life better for the people of the town? So it's really that, I suppose, quality of development at its heart. So that's a really important piece for us as a partnership. And again, more fundamentally than ever, you know, this is a living vision for the town. It adapts, it's flexible, and it's always moving forward. So where we are in 2020 in terms of sort of concept, master plan and movement piece, we're working collectively with Glenn Howells, architects and their team to move the vision forward, evolving the sort of place shaping approach, rethinking some of our spaces, and rethinking how the town works and operates, movement being integral to that, as Bill's alluded to. You know, what do the town centres, what a town centre is going to look like, the constraints of Shrewsbury with the river, but also the fact that it shouldn't be the constraint of the town, it's to celebrate the river. How do we bring the river into the town to celebrate and allow people to get to the river, to let the town breathe? So that's a really important piece for us, and we've done that incredibly collectively. We've kind of been co-designing that with our stakeholders and partners in a series of workshops over the spring and summertime. And obviously adding some commercial viability and reality into that. So we're quite excited that work's progressing and coming forward now. So obviously I wanted to talk to you about the Shrewsbury Recovery Task Force and our approach that we've taken to respond to COVID in Shrewsbury. So obviously we've taken this through the Big Town Plan partnership in everything that we do. And we've taken back this sort of bounce back Shrewsbury approach. So we've had virtual meetings every week, you know, action focused about a work plan, building and using the framework from the High Street Task Force to do this. And it's about ensuring people feel safe, helping people to adapt to the new normal, and helping the town to open up. And the Big Town Plan is the blueprint for many of the changes and opportunities. And it's been an opportunity to test out some of the ideas in the Big Town Plan. It's kind of that disruptive planning approach. You know, we've been able to, because we've had to close some areas, we've been able to have some pop-up spaces, enabling shops to open up into the road, and bringing some of the principles that we've been looking at through the Big Town Plan, you know, forward and accelerating some of those. So it's that sort of managed outdoor space and safe footfall and temporary sort of movement interventions around the town. We've held a series of webinars as well to support the businesses, to inform residents of what we're doing. And a really strong branding programme for the town, you know, a collective programme and messages out to the public and to businesses to bring them together. I just wanted to share with you the work we've done on the Big Town Plan map during this period. So this is a commonplace map approach that we've taken, which enables anybody, residents, businesses, to contribute and shape actually the COVID recovery plan. So people are able to post notes on there, suggest ideas. You know, we've collected those, we've had over 2,500 contributions, and we've gathered those and kind of formed them into ideas and approaches, some short, medium and long-term ideas, feedback. You know, this plan, yes, we're the three main partners because of our statuses, but actually this is a plan, this is everybody's plan, and it seems funny to say about engagement because it's a constant thing. You don't do engagement, you talk and you listen, and it's collaboration. You know, this is what we do on a daily basis. And I suppose the Big Town Plan, as cheesy as it is, it sort of runs through everything we do, and it's just in our nature to ensure that this is a plan for the whole town. It's holistic and it's collaborative. So I wanted to leave you on this image, which is the Celebrating Independence month we've been running, photography, taking over our social media, you know, welcome back to Shrewsbury, some brilliant imagery on our social media campaign to just, you know, help people feel safe, help people come back, and supporting our businesses, the wonderful independents that we have in the town, to get their message out there. So thank you very much.
Hayley, thank you very much. You're going to have people wanting to move there. It's excellent. Scotland has long been ahead of us in thinking about its town centres. So it's a delight to hear from an experience in Scotland, which has been looking at visioning. So Alan, over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Okay. I'll present the document that's just been issued as Scottish Government National Guidance, and this is basically a methodology of how to create a vision for a town, and it's based on a pilot study vision for Paisley town centre. And you can download that from Shropshire Council website, and Bill has kindly put a link to it in his recent document as well. And I'll refer to the Paisley vision throughout this document as an example, as you might expect. I think you all get why we need divisions. I won't dwell on that. I think you all get on that. I think I would only say that the Scottish Government particularly stress that the town centre is the battleground for well-being, for inclusion and mental health, and they're really serious about it. And this, as everyone has said, the transition happening away from retail anyway, the post-COVID, it has now accelerated and become more important, particularly for well-being. Okay, the format is in 22 manifesto items, or a Hugh manifesto if you like. I'm not going to dwell on all of them. We could have a 3-day conference on each subject. I just want to give you an idea of what's in the document and how it's structured. And the idea is to create consistency in the approach to the visions that are being prepared by centres and by local authorities. There are a lot of procurement notices coming out with different briefs. They're coming out with different values for the project. And I think we've experienced that in England in the future High Street Fund bids. So parity and consistency is the ambition from this document. The first one, probably the most important to get right, is don't spread the jam too thin. We are focused on restarting the engine of the high street. We've got to keep it tight, get this working as a catalyst for the whole town, and don't allow that boundary to be moved by politics or vested interests. We know this. Bill said, we're not going to go back to the 70s and 80s, the sunny days of busy retail-led high streets. But this is a once in a generation, if not a once in a lifetime chance to rebalance our town centres. And in that sense, maybe we should be going back to the 50s, where we had all the mixed uses in the town centre and without the retail billy boy dominance of later years. Bill's talked about purpose as well. Extremely important, the power of narrative. This is the glue that holds the whole vision together. We've seen it, small town in Scotland's become the book town with Book Festival. The North Coast 500 doesn't exist other than in a brand reveal, and it's now incredibly successful, bringing with it some of its own problems. Paisley, the case study, is too big. It's 80,000 population. It's too big for one story. It has one theme, which is openness, and that openness is coming from the probably the behaviours that arose from working in a highly industrialised town, and the intensity of proximity for people. This is one of the best received images of the document, and it puts people right at the heart of the vision. What activities would different age groups use and different demographics use? Where do they overlap? Because when they overlap, that's where community happens. Now, I've added in a few slides, Simon, because you've said that this is also about data. We work with a Landy Future Places Insight team who have an expertise in gathering the data. And what's important to get that right is to cut through the noise of the opinions of particularly loud voices, whether they're community council or private business, and to base things on fact. And councils in particular really need evidence. We need evidence that these skills are working. We all feel it and know it is gut, but it's just to get that evidence and then find out what we do need. So there's various electronic ways of gathering the information that Izzy at Landy uses, some of it quite sophisticated, like Skynet from Terminator, through mobile phones, and we can harvest that data. But the face-to-face intercepts are great. Once you get past them saying, I want handles and I want a pre-mark, you really get a good feel for the town and people in the town what they really want. And then it's our job as designers to apply that information to the physical and to use that as a basis for moving forward. Now, just a word of warning, you don't put a number as a vision, but we want to build it in the foundations of numbers. We also need to bring what is best practice and ideas, because people don't know what they don't know. This is another slide that's been reacted well to, and it's about putting people in the centre of the story in your vision. Probably one of the biggest items in the agenda is this idea of there is a big or two large defunct or struggling shopping centres, for example, in a town. Now, I think that's great in many ways, because I know that town's got a future, because it has a large development site at its heart where we can take what retail is left, push it to the edges, activate the streets, and then we can repopulate the town with what's left. Now, this shopping centre in Paisley has 46% of retail and vacant space in it alone. And so we've done various proposals to show what a residential-led mixed-use scheme would look like, how it would stack up, what it costs, and we've done that for private for sale, built to rent, the retirement home, and student accommodation, large variety. And this is real. This isn't pie in the sky. There is already real developer interest in this, and that's come out of this vision process for the town. Now, we know this to be true. We talked about why is the town important. It's the place of shared memory, the landscape of people's shared memory. So we're better for a care home rather than the periphery of a town, than the landscape that they will never forget. We will never forget. It's not just about that. One repurposing of a major asset is a catalyst to then look at the rest of the area, to bring sites forward for development, to go to the owners and champon their doors and say, right, we want to develop that now, and if you don't, if you're not up for it, then we'll need to find a way to make you up for it. Attractors. It's a word we made up, but it's just what are these things that you can put into the town to make up go in the space that retail's left? What are these things we can reintroduce back to the 50s mix in a town? Cinemas, food halls, public buildings, museums, libraries, etc. And I've always said we weren't trying to put a cinema into the centre of Paisley. We were trying to put a cinema in the right place in the centre of Paisley. And again, Bill's kindly featured this project in his document to take out this eyesore at the bottom left and reskin it with a new community cinema where there used to be a cinema 40, 50 years ago to energise the high street. And we are now working with the Paisley Community Trust to deliver that. This is real. It's come out of the vision. Food halls. We've published research on food halls. Altrincham is famously delivered the food hall, and it seems to have reversed the fortunes of the town. Has it? Well, Izzy at Alandis looked into it for us and tracked movement, and footfall is up 7%. Yes, it has. And it's important to have this empirical evidence. And these new attractors are the opportunity to save treasured buildings in the town. But throughout, you've got to show, a vision's got to show what it's going to look like. It's not just a plan. You've got to be at eye level. You've got to put people into this vision. They've got to be in the story. Workplace, working from home. I'm reading quite a lot in the press about how town centres are becoming more important for the work from home. That's not going away. The genie's out of the bottle, and that's great because it's environmentally friendly. But people still need to go and get coffee in the town, and they need spaces to meet people physically. So well-connected towns will see a growth in workplace. Again, saving buildings, new uses. The heritage in Paisley, there's £100 million spent on new and refurbished buildings in the centre of the town. One is a library being placed in the middle of the high street, which is genius. Change perceptions, change what people think about the town, talk down their town. That's what the vision does. But also change their physical perception of how they move through the town, how they see, open up new ways. This is not, Bob Wright is not just altruistic, let's make it nice. This gives us development frontage for residential. And it also opens up and brings that church into the high street that people didn't even know was there. And the same, that's the gateway to an old cinema that had been saved for the entrance to the shopping mall on the high street. So we're saving it again, and it's a new gateway to a new residential mixed-use quarter right on the high street. I won't dwell on all this because I'm a bit short of time. We've got 3 gateways from the ring road in Paisley into the centre of town, and they all look like the bottom picture there, dark, full of pigeons and broken netting. It wouldn't take much, would it? Places to gather, more important now. Each town, part of their narrative, have their own events. We're looking at widening high streets, turn a street into a place. And the rival square, top right, let's make the rail company do something with the underpass there as well. They make a lot of money out of this station. We're uncovering a new place. It's not a new place because it used to be there 100 years ago. So that's bringing back the heritage, celebrating the buildings you have. I'm not going to get into the car thing. It's about when you repopulate, obviously you've got your passive surveillance and activity. These dead zones at night, created by retail that pushed everything else out. It can be reversed. And shopping centres, they know about this. Dwell time. If you only need one person out of a family of 6 who has a specific need to use a toilet or adult changing facility, and if you don't have it, they're not coming. They're not using the town. And Paisley has a college and a university, but they don't really integrate and they don't energise as they should. So just to wind them up, I knocked down the shopping centre and put a new university right in the heart of it, heart of the town. Imagine that, turning Paisley into Oxford or St Andrews. And we know all this. And then you have the vision that's going to carry everyone through for the next 10 years, because it's going to take time to do this. That's why the vision is really important, and the right level of vision is really important. And at the end, there you go, you got your pie chart, there's no red in it anymore, job done. Great town centre. And that's it, thank you.
Thank you very much. I can have a feeling this webinar could have been 2 hours. There's been so much information, so much inspiration, and so many questions. What we'll do with the questions is just try to get answers to a few of them now. Those that we don't answer, we'll work with our panelists, hopefully, to be able to get some responses, which we'll post on our website over the course of the next week. I have a question that was originally aimed at Bill, but all of them have touched on it, which is about how do you advocate the value of heritage to government as a fulcrum for regeneration? Bill, do you have views on that?
Does that work? Yeah. Okay. Look, I think the best way to describe heritage is to describe it as your brand. For those people that know what commercial does, it does things because of a brand. So if you think about the brands that you all know, like Nike, for example, you recognize Nike, and it's a lifestyle, it's about health, it's about, about you when you put the Nike brand on. That's got to be what towns are, and where better place to look for a brand than your heritage. And we're blessed in the UK with this history, so that you can actually have that brand at the forefront of your proposition to attract people to come, live, work, play and visit. And that's what I think we need to sell to central and local governments, that you need a brand that describes you, and what better place to look than your heritage. And you can then make that brand what you want after that. So if you look at what you've just seen from Paisley, you can change the lifestyle in Paisley with all that stuff that Alan just went through, or even Shrewsbury, the stuff that they've got in their vision. And that becomes your brand, but you need something to hang your hat on. And why not hang it on something called heritage?
Thanks, Bill. Hayley, there was quite a lot of responses to your presentation, including about community engagement, involvement, what sort of numbers of community members are you working with? And also a second question, which was really how much money has all this cost or planned to cost?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so taking the first question about the community involvement and engagement, I mean, the first sort of element I was showing around the engagement we had when we had the pop-up shop, you know, we had physically over 2,500 people through the door. We've taken all of that work and knowledge and formed it into those kind of 4 areas of focus in terms of themes, and then we're working collectively with stakeholder groups and engagement groups, with young people through a youth kind of particular target group. You know, we're planning for the future for young people. You know, there can be a lack of engagement with young people about what they want with the university and the town. So we have focused kind of themed engagement sessions, but we are continually, as I said, having that open dialogue with people in the town to feed in to everything we're doing. So we have sort of targeted sort of engagement, I can put it like that, but also more focused sessions on particular elements. And I think was the second question about funding.
Yeah, both I think the cost of where you've got to so far and how much you might spend in the overall thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much to that, I suppose. I mean, as a partnership, we've all put in some funding to take that forward. You know, not huge amounts of money, but, you know, enough to help us do things that we need to do to react and drive plans forward as a partnership. So that's been agreed as a budget, which is you know, a helpful position to be in. There's obviously a lot of work, you know, and it's what I said about playing to our strengths as organisations as well. So we have taken forward some master planning, which has been collectively, and that's really important. We did that as a partnership. that wasn't anyone taking the lead and paying for that separately. That's a partnership approach to ensure that we all have a stake in that and we're working together. That's the ethos of everything we do. There obviously are things from a council perspective that fall within our remit to deliver and take forward. So as I said, around shopping centres and some of the more detailed work on that falls within our remit and to sort of fund, if I can put it like that. But obviously it all comes through the delivery of the big town plan, so that's kind of the core of that. So yes, I suppose, how do you put a figure on that? Because this is going to be millions of pounds to transform Shrewsbury. So yeah, if there's specific bits people want to know about, I'm sure I can answer those in separate questions.
Okay, and a question for Alan about someone who's saying, how did you work to persuade what he calls monolithic, slow, unaccountable bodies to take action quickly with quality at its heart? Sorry, Alan, are you on mute?
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me now, Simon? Yeah.
You can.
How did we persuade...
Paisley in particular being referenced, but...
You're talking about the local authority, probably, in that sense. Well, they were part of the vision team, and they're very active and they're up for the cup to start with. But Phil Prentice at Scotland's Towns Partnerships is on your board. He was influential at convincing the government that they should joint fund the vision project, and he convinced them that there would be an outcome, which is what I've just presented, to the benefit of the wider region or the country. And so we didn't really meet a lot of resistance. Yeah, it's a vision, we haven't built anything yet, but generally people, if it's a compelling enough vision and good enough story with this widespread support, who's going to stand in the way of that? Who's going to make that party political? Well, they are going to make it party political by not standing in the way of it, and they're going to support it. So,
thanks very much. I've got one more question for Bill, I think, which was, how can retailers support these visions? Sorry, Bill, are you on mute as well?
Sorry, yeah, I'm just pressed my button. By the way, can I just mention leadership before I answer that question? What Alan just mentioned. If Phil Prentice told me I could fly off the top of a building, I'd probably jump, because he's a great leader. And it is about leaders, and it's about persuasion, and it's not difficult to persuade people when your ideas are good ones and they're common sense. But if you go back to the retailers, well, let's put them into two categories. Let's put them into the local independent retailer, and let's put them into the national chain store retailer. The local independent retailer, it's obvious for them to get involved with their big plan in Shrewsbury, with their local authority, because commercially driving up footfall in their town is going to help them. So that's not difficult. They might want to then to look at how they can lock into the marketing that the big picture offers. But when it comes to the national chains, this is where they've got to wake up, and they've got to change their approach to life. We can no longer put up with, I'm going to mention Philip Green here. I don't know if you've seen the film Greed, but I mean, the fact is we can't put up with that kind of stuff anymore. We don't want to suck the life out of towns, suck the economy dry. We want to put it back. So my appeal to national chain retailers is, why don't you give your executives the opportunity to get into towns? I'm not just talking about the store manager being on a bid. I'm talking about senior executives going to Shrewsbury, going to Paisley, and becoming a big part of that vision. And then you will win the hearts and minds of the people that live there. So I think we used to call it corporate social responsibility in the 90s, which the government imposed on us, and it didn't work. Everyone paid lip service to it. I'm talking about a different kind of engagement with the community that you are earning your living from. Let's get in amongst them and give your senior executives different challenges to get in there and be a part of the reshaping of the future. And if you do that, your brand is going to benefit from it very much indeed.
Great, thanks, Bill. We're reaching the stage where we need to wrap up. There were a lot of questions, so we'll have a look at them and we'll get answers. Somebody commented, though, is this just a single plan for high street visions? It's definitely not. Every high street has to take its own choices, build on its own individual places. But there's lots of information, I think, that we've been sharing this afternoon that may well help you in that process. There will be lessons learned through all of these things, and we have to apply those. But we have a finishing action, and Tom, one more slide, please. As we said, many visions are poor or limited, or as this shows, out of focus or fuzzy. And we thought it might be quite interesting for those of you who've heard some of today to try and critically evaluate a current vision in the light of COVID-19. Those places that have them, those that have published them, have they changed in the result of this, and how do they need to change? And to help you in this task, we've published some questions which will be on our website in the details about this webinar, with a bit of guidance. And if you have chance to have a look on websites, try and find some of these visions, it might make it useful to you as you yourself get involved in vision development. So that's our task for this week. Next slide, please, Tom. Just before we look at next week, can I say thank you very much to our three speakers today. I think it's been an excellent session. Thanks to those of you who joined us. I hope this is going to inspire you to think about visioning in a much more holistic way and actually help to change our towns, because unless we have visions, as Henry Kissinger said, if you don't know where you're going, every road leads to nowhere. And I think that's the danger when we're thinking about transformation. We have to know where we're going. So next week, we're going to move on to think about communication, to think about placefulness, this sense perhaps of the heritage, the distinctiveness of places, and building on individual characteristics. And we're going to look at marketing and branding to think how you build loyalty and commitment to your place. Part of that process, as we've seen today from both what we've heard in Paisley and in Shrewsbury, is actually getting people involved and people engaged in making their places better. You want them tweeting out, you want them using social media to debate things. And we'd like you to do that as well. So we're going to encourage you to come back next week. But if you're enjoying these sessions, if you think they're useful or other people might find them useful, all of them are on our website. People can watch things back. So please share on social media about this, get them to join in, and that's where we go. And we hopefully will see many of you next week. Thank you.